The morning of the eclipse, the air in the hospital felt heavy and cold, as though hiding a dark secret. We decided to roll up the blinds so our patients could watch the eclipse instead of the same white walls. Then the phone rang. It was from one of our first responders. They were bringing in a man in critical condition. My colleague and I started preparing the bed, vitals, and other things. We were finishing up when the ambulance crew rushed in. They were bringing in an elderly man who looked like he was in severe pain. I could overhear one of the doctors saying that they could have taken him straight to the morgue. He had suffered multiple heart attacks, and he was suffering another one. They tried to perform CPR on him, but his vitals were not coming back. Soon after, the deafening sound of the flatline on the AG came. "Nurse, please come take care of our patient," screamed the doctor who was performing the CPR. As I approached him, the solar eclipse started happening. I could hear the doors banging shut behind me. I was standing next to his bed and touched his hand to take the vitals out. And then, it happened. It felt like an electric shock ran through my body, from my toes to the top of my head. Everything jerked. The ICU room looked different now. There were no beds, no patients, no equipment. The room was empty. The lighting looked like somebody had painted the light bulbs with a layer of black. The tiles on the walls and floors had small cracks from which a moldy, gooey blackness was coming out. There was no sound except for the flickering of the fluorescent lights. The air felt heavy and cold. I tried to move my head around, but it moved in directions I didn't intend. It felt like I was in someone else's body. The hands looked firm and old, the body looked manly. It wore a plain white t-shirt, plain white pants, and white shoes. Then the body started moving towards the window, looking out. The hospital park, the trees, benches, and little sidewalks were gone. There was only white nothingness going as far as the eye could see. The body moved closer to the window, trying to see out, and then I saw the reflection. I screamed, but nothing came out, only the echo of it in my mind. The reflection was of the man who died a second ago. How was he standing here, walking around? His heart flatlined, and he was pronounced dead by the doctors. But now he was standing here, walking without an issue. For a second, he was touching his body. The look of bewilderment didn't leave his face. I'm not sure the man was aware that I was keeping him company. I had no idea what had happened to me. Was this some dream or an illusion? Did I have a seizure or some brain aneurysm? And this was all happening in my head. I wanted to think that this was a dream, a fabrication of my mind, but it felt real, too real. It didn't feel like a dream or hallucination. It felt like real life. My mind was sharp and focused, and I could see things clearly, not like in a dream. The man tried to call out a faint hello. No one answered. He looked around, but there was only the big empty room of our ICU unit. He walked to the doorway, which now had no door, and he called out into the hallway again without answer. Looking around the hallway, I could see that some things were different. On the left of the door, the hallway should have continued, but there was only a tile wall, the same one as was in the ICU room. To the right were the big glass doors, as in our unit. The old man cautiously walked into the hallway. He approached the glass door, and it opened automatically. He first looked out into the hallway, cautiously walking out. Next to the glass door was an elevator, the one the ambulance medics brought him through. To the right, there should have been a flight of stairs, but there was nothing, only the wall again. Looking ahead, the hallway ended abruptly, as did the other side. He walked to the elevator and pressed the call button. You could hear the familiar rattling of the elevator. Then the door opened. It had the same strange lighting as the rest of the hallway, and the inside was covered with the white leaking tiles too. There was a metal plate next to the door, but it had only 2 buttons. Floors 0 and 5. The man walked in, and the elevator door shut behind him. He pressed the button 0 and waited for a few seconds. Then the usual click sounded, and the door opened on the bottom floor. There were the usual metal doors with small windows leading into the yard, but this time, there was no yard behind that glass. There was the familiar white nothingness seen from the upstairs window. The man turned. Behind him, you could see stairs leading up, but they went into the ceiling. The man came closer to the door, but there was no handle on it. He pushed into them, but they stood firm. Banging on them made no sound. He turned around and walked to the elevator. The walk was fast and the button was pressed rapidly. He kept riding up and down frantically, each time looking out like he was hoping to see something new. It seemed like a crazy person was lurking around the strange, modified hospital I was so used to. It was only after his 4th trip up and down the elevator that the man stopped. He walked to the corner of the EQ room, sat on the ground, and wept while repeating, "What is going on?" My mind was now pulsating with each of his cries. The lights started flickering in a repetitive beat. Then, my vision turned dark. I woke up on the hospital floor. The eclipse had passed. Doctors and nurses were standing around me. Finally, she's awake. Apparently, I collapsed on the floor, and no one was able to make me wake up. When they checked my vitals, my heart was not beating. I looked at the AG machine. It still showed a flat line. The doctors looked puzzled. I guess this one's broken. I didn't tell anybody what happened. I still wasn't sure what my experience was. It felt real, too real. But at that time, my rational mind wouldn't allow me to think of it as anything besides a very vivid dream. That day I was discharged from the hospital and given 2 days for medical recovery. They wanted to keep me there for further tests, but I declined. That first day after work felt more like a dreamy haze than anything. I can barely remember how I got home. That night I kept having nightmares of being in strange rooms or buildings with no way out, frantically searching around for any possibility of escape, but each time there was none. I would wake up in a pool of sweat, gasping for air. The last one before the early morning was of the IQ room, but this time it was me who was there, not him. Soon I was banging around at the doors and windows, frantically riding up and down the elevator. From this one, I woke up with a scream, and the voice of the old man echoed in my head. "Hello?" On the second day, I sat around mindlessly watching comfort TV shows while slowly drinking wine. I just needed to ease my mind for the day. As the night was approaching, I drank more heavily to knock myself out, so the nightmares wouldn't come again. I woke up in the morning with my head banging and stomach acid all the way up my throat. Looking at myself in the mirror, my eyes were red with black bags underneath them. I got into my car and drove to the hospital. I took the front door entrance and walked up the stairs, fearing that going by the back door and using the elevator would trigger a stress response. The doctors and nurses welcomed me. One of my friends commented that I still looked pretty out of it. My eyes were still bloodshot from the wine. I just brushed it off as having to wake up so early after my day off. I wanted to leave the whole experience behind me, so I knew I had to pretend I was okay. We chatted for some time. Apparently, they had another patient die during the night shift. I then walked out into the IQ room. A wave of cold ran through my spine. My legs started shivering. I let out a faint gasp, and the clipboard I was carrying fell out of my hands. The old man was sitting in the corner again, weeping this time on the other side of the room. Next to him was an old lady banging on the window, who was screaming for help. They were both dressed in that white attire. Their skin and hair looked bluishly white. My whole head started spinning around, then my vision darkened. I woke up again on the bed in our break room. This time, they didn't let me leave so easily. I stayed the whole day in the hospital getting tested for all sorts of illnesses, but they couldn't find anything physically wrong with my body. Eventually, I was diagnosed as burned out and put on medical leave until my condition got better. I drank heavily again today. An hour ago, I stumbled into the bathroom. The lights flickered. I looked at my reflection, and my face had the same color as the patient's in the IQ room. The tiles turned white and started leaking black mold. I ran back into my room, sat there, and held onto my plushies, rocking back and forth. Edit. I can feel the electric static going through my body again. The humming of the fluorescent light is echoing through my room. My hands are turning a white-bluish color. I hear the elevator door open. The eclipse is slowly setting in again. I can see the outside of my window turning into that white nothingness. If anyone's reading this, please find me. Don't let my soul wander around in the IQ aimlessly.